can make it there. I'll make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York.
How we doing, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast here on Facebook Live and YouTube. I am your host, Richie. On tonight's show, going to be speaking on the events of Week 3 in the NFL. So much to unpack, so much to talk about. Mahir, bro, what's up, man? Got to speak on the New York Giants and just the disappointment that I have on so many levels, and it goes a lot deeper than losing a primetime football game. We're going to start there. I think it's safe to say the New York Giants fan base has seen more than enough of Russell Wilson. 3 games played, 1 phenomenal performance, 2 crappy ones. And I think after seeing the way that Caleb Williams cut up the Cowboys, it was a lot of fool's gold seeing what Russell Wilson did in Week 2, having the best statistical game yardage-wise in his career. I'm starting to question, I'm really questioning why the Giants even brought in Russell Wilson when you consider that Jameis Winston is the guy that's on the roster for 2 years. They could have had a triple backup, or second backup, I should say, in Tommy DeVito, who is now in New England. They didn't have to go get Russ. I don't think Russ did anything last year that proved that he needed to get a contract with the New York Giants. They were also interested in Aaron Rodgers, but the difference is Aaron Rodgers, from a statistical value, had a better year last year than Patrick Mahomes on a bad Jet team. Having said all that, the Giants lose the game 22-9. A couple of immediate concerns for the New York Giants. Andrew Thomas did not finish yesterday's game. It appears that it was more of a pitch count kind of deal where they were trying to get his strength back into playing every down. It was good seeing him out there. I thought he did an admirable job. And, the injury bug is real. Graham Gano, New York Giants kicker, one of the better kickers in the league when he's healthy, but he's not healthy. He did kick a chippy from, I believe, about 25, 26 yards out yesterday, but he was injured during pregame warmups. Doug Rush, a guy who covers the Giants, very knowledgeable football person, just very knowledgeable, feels that Younghoe Koo possibly could be the guy to bring in for the Giants, as they're going to need a kicker. Hamstring injuries don't heal in a week, and I also believe that with the injury history of Graham Gano, the Giants might want to look forward in general at that position. The Jackson Dart cries from the fan base is real, and I do believe that Russell Wilson may very well be replaced before Week 4's game. He might be replaced. Would I put Jameis Winston in before Jackson Dart? Yeah, actually I would. Because I'm not sure that you want to rupture this kid's confidence right off the rip. But, sometimes these young players thrive under those conditions. So we'll see what ultimately Brian Daboll chooses to do. And speaking of Brian Daboll, hard to not feel that there is a hot seat that's going to get hotter and hotter He was 9-7-1 in his first year as the New York Giants head coach. He won Coach of the Year. He won a playoff game. They were a game away from the NFC title game. But it has been just utter depression for the Giants team and their fan base since that season. And I am just not sure how much longer Giants owner John Mara is going to be patient with not only Dable, but also general manager Joe Shane. As seeing Saquon Barkley go to the Philadelphia Eagles, run for 2K, and win a Super Bowl was incredibly painful. And embattled former quarterback Daniel Jones is off to a 3-0 start in his Indianapolis career. He goes by Indiana Jones now amongst the media. He's playing really great football. So, what is the common denominator? I would have to think it's the Giants coaching. You know, you could blame a lot of people for the peril and fails of Daniel Jones, but he's doing well with Shane Steichen. He's doing well with Indy. He's got a nice running game. He's got a good O-line. Point to be made is he didn't thrive in New York with the exception of a glimmer of 2 seasons. 19, he did a lot of things well under Pat Shurmur's West Coast offense. And in 22, he and Saquon Barkley helped the Giants emerge in the top 5 in rushing yards in that season, as that was the focal point of the Giants' offensive philosophy. And he played the game of his life in Minnesota during that season's playoffs before getting outed, he and Saquon, by the Philadelphia Eagles. They have not been to a playoff game since. As the game goes yesterday, it feels like I say this every time I speak on the Giants. Another winnable game and a lot of opportunities missed. Bobby Okereke picking up a backwards pass from Patrick Mahomes. It was a live ball. Mahomes, to his credit, ran down the sideline and literally stole the ball from Okereke, similar to how a point guard would creep up on another point guard, or just anyone in basketball, really. That was a huge part of the game. Early on, I wasn't even aware that Graham Gano was injured. Shouts out Russell Smith, as well as Joe Mangles. They told me on my socials that he was injured. I took a quick shower. I missed the pregame. I did not realize that Graham Gano was injured going into last night. And I'm going to embarrassingly say that he was on my parlay. So obviously you can't win a parlay with a player that's not playing. Shame on you, Hard Rock, for allowing that. Usually if you play a guy and they can put an X next to him in baseball, they'll let you ride on that. But that was my fault for not paying extra attention. The New York Giants were just cooked downfield by Patrick Mahomes. The defense did play well. They got some quality hits on Mahomes. They applied a lot of pressure on Mahomes. It was not an easy victory for Kansas City, but when you're already in a situation where you feel a ridiculous amount of pressure to constantly have to go for it on 4th down and you don't have a healthy kicker, these are the kind of things that could happen. And quite frankly, the New York Giants were outcoached, and this has been another common theme with Brian Dable. As he came into New York known as a quarterback whisperer of sorts, a great innovative offensive mind. But the Giants, in every statistical category for the most part, with the exception of 2022, have been on the bottom of the NFL in offense. And Daniel Jones is no longer there to blame. Which way are we pointing now? One thing I will say, the New York Giants have a very talented pass rush. We saw Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau apply a lot of pressure yesterday to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes did a phenomenal job of eluding, avoiding, and just making plays on what lesser quarterbacks would have just been dead to rights, and it would have been a sack. On the horizon for the Giants, Los Angeles Chargers, it gets no easier. They are currently undefeated as they defeated divisional rival Denver. Justin Herbert, statistically probably his worst game of the young season, but they won the game, and that's the most important thing. Unfortunately, Najee Harris likely done for the year. Achilles tendon injury. It was really hard to see that. Other injuries around the league. Nick Bosa looks like he might be out for the year with the same injury. And CeeDee Lamb has the dreaded high ankle sprain. We're going to keep it in the NFC East for a minute. My closing thought on the New York Football Giants it is very uncharacteristic of the organization to ever fire a coach midway through the year or during the season. They haven't done it since Ben McAdoo back in 2017, but I don't know how much longer they're going to be patient. It is just not working for Brian Dable. I do believe that he will be the first casualty. I don't necessarily think that he and Joe Shane will get outed together, as I do think that some people in the Giants organization are confident in Shane's ability to eye talent, as the New York Giants do have one of the younger rosters in the NFL today. Moving it along, but keeping it in the East, Washington Commanders, big win over the Las Vegas Raiders. Marcus Mariota doing his job and doing it well. Fantasy owners are still kind of frustrated with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt and the Commanders' approach on offense, as everyone is just kind of waiting to see who's going to jump in and be a bona fide number one for this offense. But sometimes, unfortunately, similar to Kansas City's run game, it just doesn't go down like that, as Jaden Daniels, when he does get healthy again, just like Patrick Mahomes, are the leading rushers for their respective teams. But the Commanders definitely rose to the occasion, beat a Raider team that, a lot of people felt was going to take advantage of the Commanders missing their best player in Jaden Daniels. Marcus Mariota, no stranger to being a high-profile quarterback, as he was drafted very high in his draft class. But a journeyman who has been around the ringer in the NFL. He was featured as one of the quarterbacks on the Netflix special a couple of seasons ago. But Mariota doing his job, the Commanders doing enough to beat the Vegas Raiders in the interconference matchup. Dallas Cowboys definitely not looking forward to their next opponent, and not with good momentum, as the Chicago Bears get their first victory. I talked at the top of the hour about Russell Wilson doing his thing and just having a blow-up game in Arlington against the Cowboys. Much of the same yesterday in Soldier Field with Caleb Williams. And this is a Bears offense that has been struggling to get going, but that was not the case in Dallas. And the Dallas secondary right now playing amongst the worst football at that respective level of the defense. They have just been piss poor, just damn awful. And the Cowboys take that 1-2 record. They will be facing the Green Bay Packers next week. Recently traded Micah Parsons. Looking at them, a bit of a shock, a lot of a shock, actually, as the Packers did get beat by the Cleveland Browns. The Browns get their first dub, 13-10 victory, a defensive struggle. Green Bay's defense still playing at a high level. Green Bay's offense just didn't click yesterday. It happens. It's early in the year. I think the shock value of it is that the Packers looked really good against formidable teams from last year, as the Los Angeles Rams were a couple of plays away from the NFC title game a year ago. You got the Washington Commanders, a team that made the NFC title game last year. And you have the Detroit Lions. I spoke out of turn speaking about the Rams. I meant to say the Lions. Lions had the best record in the NFL last year. Packers beat them week 1. Commanders were in the NFC title game, the team that beat the Lions last year. Packers beat them in week 2. So the point to be made is I don't think too many people had the Cleveland Browns pulling off the trap game upset over the Green Bay Packers, but that's exactly what happened. Now I will speak about the Rams. They blew a 19-point lead, and at that juncture of the game, the last time the Philadelphia Eagles overcame a lead of that substantial value, you have to go all the way back to the 2010 season, Miracle at the Meadowlands 2.0, the Deshaun Jackson Matt Dodge game. I remember Tom Coughlin losing his temper, throwing the clipboard in the direction of Matt Dodge. Matt Dodge was not a Giant much longer after that, as a very promising Giant season went up in smithereens in that game, as they were a 10-win team who missed the playoffs. Philly ultimately lost in Green Bay in round 1 that year. The next year, the Giants, were able, with the moniker Finish, as anyone who owns the Giants Super Bowl DVD may remember. And ultimately, the New York Giants were able to win the Super Bowl the very next year. That seems like another lifetime ago. But that's the last time the Philadelphia Eagles made a comeback of that substantiality. The Rams were all over them early and often. And this is the third consecutive matchup over the last 2 years. They played twice last year, where the Philadelphia Eagles have outlasted the Rams. The Rams are one of those teams that is one of the favorites to potentially win the NFC this year. Of course, Philadelphia being the world champions, definitely another favorite. And the team that I just mentioned that came out flat yesterday, Green Bay, is also in that conversation. But in the early going, it's the world champions of last year that still look like they are the champs. There hasn't been perfect football for the Eagles, but the test of a true champion is overcoming adversity and finding a way to win. And as much as it pains me to give the Eagles credit, they deserve every bit of it. And, Devontae Smith, I'm sure Eagles fans were happy and delighted to see him have a game, as the passing numbers have been down all around the board for the Philadelphia Eagles receivers and quarterback alike. Saquon Barkley is still missing that signature performance this year. And when you consider everything he did last year, I think that, he should be the last person to get on. But the only stat that matters is wins. And the Philadelphia Eagles are doing just that. They are winning. They are one of the better organizations in terms of just the way they do business, the way they filter in talent, the way they do everything in the NFL over the course of the last 15 years, even going back to the turn of the century where they went to 4 consecutive title games. One of them culminated in a conference championship. What else do we have going on? I did mention that the Chargers did defeat the Denver Broncos yesterday. For a little while there, it looked like the Broncos might have done enough to win the game, but hard not to be encouraged by the performance of the Los Angeles Chargers 3 weeks in. And I'll tell you what, man. I'll tell you what. Jim Harbaugh has Justin Herbert playing, in my opinion, championship level football right now. We saw what they did to the Kansas City Chiefs week 1. That was impressive. They upped the ante on their division record 2 more times, as now they're 3-0 in their division. It's very rare that you see a team play 3 consecutive games in their division to start the season off. That's exactly what the Chargers have done. And they have a victory over every team in the AFC West right now. And they look like a strong favorite out the gates, given the advantage of winning those games to win that division. The Kansas City Chiefs yesterday, far from a pretty victory. They are still down quite a few people on offense, but they did enough to win. I mentioned how they beat the Giants yesterday. The Raiders are going to Raider right now. They're not even in this conversation. And I already said what the Commanders did to them. But the Chargers right now look every bit of a team that should be taken serious and could be a team that could find themselves playing deep into January and hopefully the ultimate goal into February Super Bowl. Other happenings around the league. We've got a football game tonight. Interconference battle of 2 powerhouses in recent memory, recent years, as the Baltimore Ravens lock horns with the Detroit Lions. And should be a very entertaining game tonight. I believe that this is not a very favorable matchup for the Lions, as the Ravens, I believe, have the ability to take away what the Lions do best, which is run the football to open up the big play strike ability for quarterback Jared Goff, whether he's hitting Amon-Ra St. Brown, tight end Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, one of those 2 backs I mentioned, out of the backfield. Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the better receivers in the league. Jamison Williams, definitely a guy that you have to account for on the 9 routes. The Ravens, in my opinion, are going to ride Derrick Henry early and often. I'm sure Raven fans would really like to see Mark Andrews get going, as he has been a no-show statistically for the first 2 weeks. They are down their other tight end. Isaiah Likely is still injured. But truthfully, I don't think that from a defensive standpoint, the Lions have an answer for Lamar Jackson, and I think Lamar Jackson is going to go off tonight and really hurt the Lions on both phases of his game, whether it be with his legs or whether it be with keeping plays alive downfield and hurting the Lions. I think Mark Andrews will have a better game. I think he shows up tonight. I think Justice Hill might be used as in his role as the pass catching back. I think Derrick Henry is going to have a strong game. I got him going over 100 with at least 1 touchdown. And give me the Ravens for the interconference statement W over the Lions. Give me the Ravens 34. Give me the Lions 17. I think the Ravens are going to really assert themselves and oppose their will in this game and send a message back to the happenings of week 3. You can't talk about the Ravens without mentioning the Steelers. Steelers win a one-score game over the New England Patriots in Gillette as you know, the Steelers have been a tough team to figure out in the early going of the season as their run defense ranked in the bottom of the NFL for the first couple of seasons. And definitely struggling against the running game all over the league. First 2 weeks, they were cut up really bad by both the New York Jets as well as just pretty much everyone they played coming in. You even go to the preseason, they were looking rough on that side of the ball. But the New York Jets definitely cut them up, albeit it was a game that the Steelers were able to hang on and get the victory. Um, week 2, Seattle Seahawks, the two-headed monster, Zach Charbonnet, as well as Kenneth Walker, just really, dog walk the Steelers defense. Um, it's encouraging, but I also think that you have to keep in mind the caliber of opponent. The New England Patriots are still figuring out how to win. But anytime you can win a game in the NFL on the road, it's something to feel good about. And that's what the Steelers were able to do yesterday. And I think the Patriots are in a good place. I think this is a year where they're going to be getting tested. They're going to learn how to win. They're going to buy into the new culture that Mike Vrabel is trying to re-implement in the Patriots as they've had, you know, a bit of a fall off after Tom Brady left. One playoff appearance, Bill Belichick, along with Mac Jones. They got that one playoff berth, but it's been tough sledding for them. And, Belichick, his North Carolina Tar Heels are not doing very well right now. And, some people speculate that he might try to find a way back into the NFL. Of course, it's early to say that. We don't know just yet. San Francisco 49ers, definitely an emotional victory against the Arizona Cardinals. That came down to the wire. As many expected, a very low-scoring game. And, yeah, Zap, I couldn't agree more. The Chargers absolutely are playing some serious bully ball. We'll go back to them for a second. Um, it's the Harbaugh style. We had Eagles wide receiver coach Aaron Moorhead on the panel, and he alluded to what Coach Harbaugh does so well. And the biggest thing that makes the Chargers so dangerous right now, and we're not even talking about the other side of the ball, defense, is that they have just so many weapons. You bring back Keenan Allen, who always had a really strong rapport with Justin Herbert. You draft Trey Harris, who is going to be a good player, but based on their depth chart, is hanging at the number 4 spot. Lad McConkey is your number 1, and of course you got Quentin Johnston, who's finally meeting his potential. So this is a Charger team that is loaded. Omarion Hampton out of UNC, one of the better rookie backs in my opinion coming into this draft class, coming into the league this year. And Will Dissly, low-key, a really good tight end. Their offensive line is holding up, despite the loss of Rashawn Slater coming into the season. And this is a team that is dangerous, no question about it, Zabby. My apologies for not seeing this. I'm actually doing this on my phone. But, yeah, buddy, no question. The Chargers right now, in my opinion, look like one of the 2 best teams in the AFC, at least one of the 2. Baltimore and Buffalo, that was a classic a couple of weeks back. But I put Buffalo just a peg above Baltimore right now, and you have to. They beat them, and Buffalo and the Chargers have yet to lose a game. Other things that I'm thinking about around the league, really scary how bad the Cincinnati Bengals looked getting just plowed by the Minnesota Vikings as Jake Browning had a rough day. The whole offense did. The defense didn't have a better day either. Mason ran all over them. Carson Wentz played his part, 2 touchdowns. And I alluded to this off coming into this game, that if Carson Wentz really looks good and is playing well and J.J. McCarthy comes back, naturally he will be the starter again and struggles, the Minnesota Vikings might have a bit of a quarterback controversy on their hands, or at least a quarterback holdup, where they might want to rein back McCarthy if Wentz is playing good football. It really depends on what the organization values right now. If it's winning now, it could very well be Wentz. If it's, living to fight another day and to just let McCarthy get the invaluable experience, that's the answer. It's just one game, and the Bengals aren't exactly the 85 Bears or the 2000 Ravens on defense, but it's got to be encouraging to see Carson Wentz play the game he played when he hasn't started in quite some time. And then you have Jordan Addison, who's going to be coming off the suspended list, rejoining the team, and that pushes Adam Thielen to your number 3. TJ Hawkinson is obviously your starting tight end, and you have Justin Jefferson, or world wide receiver, at the 1. So, Carson Wentz or McCarthy are going to have their fair share of weapons to play with. As this Vikings team is out to prove that last year's 14-win season was not a fluke, and they have a very talented roster. And right now they're 2-1. So the Minnesota Vikings, most definitely a team that in the early going looks like at minimum could be a playoff team. I think that you can make a logical argument that Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay all could be in the playoffs and all could be fighting for the division crown. I personally think it will be Green Bay. I think yesterday is not something that many should worry about. It was a typical quintessential trap game. But here's the trap. Daniel Jones is double dipping into salary. Another win for Danny Dimes, formerly of the Giants, currently of the Colts. I don't think anybody, maybe with the exception of our own Idris Salam, saw Daniel Jones playing at this level 3 weeks into the season. But Daniel Jones is playing really great football. The Indianapolis Colts have a strong defense. They are well coached. Shane Steichen really elevating the play of Daniel Jones as it looks like a perfect marriage in the early going. And I must say, I'm happy for DJ. I don't think that he got the fairest shake in New York. When you're constantly changing coordinators as well as head coaches, it's hard to have any kind of real cohesiveness. But the Colts do beat division rival Tennessee, and they are currently 3-0, and everything is perfect in Indianapolis right now, staying in that division. Shout out to H-Town's finest. I hope you're watching. This guy had so much to say to Mike Zappi when Mike Zappi predicted that the Jacksonville Jaguars could indeed be the AFC South champions this year. He had an awful lot to say to me as well when I suggested that Daniel Jones could be NFL Comeback Player of the Year. And this is ahead of the first games of the season. This was the AFC South preview. The Texans are 0-3, ladies and gents, as Joe Mixon is still on the mend. Nick Chubb is not himself. Their receiving room is not on the level that it was a year ago due to injury and just other things. And C.J. Stroud does not look like the quarterback that he looked like a couple of seasons ago. And these are all contributing factors as to why DeMeco Ryans' team has yet to win a game. I wouldn't go full panic mode if I'm a Texans fan, because on the positive side of things, they have contributed and competed and had moments that looks like they could be a winning team yet again, but it's not translating into the win-loss column, and that is concerning. Liam Cohen off to a good start with his Jaguars. They could easily be 3-0. Unfortunately, they are only 2-1, but still in a good position. The Colts are currently undefeated at 3-0, and the winless Titans and the winless Texans are on the bottom right now. Obviously, the Texans look a lot closer to getting their first win than the Titans do. But one thing I've seen through the first 3 weeks of this young NFL season is that there's a lot of parity, guys. You have teams that many deem to be the 2 or 3 or maybe 4 teams that are a step or two above the rest, that are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. And it's it's a little weird when you see how bad the Chiefs have struggled out of the gates. But I remember a Kansas City Chiefs team a couple of seasons ago that looked just so unlike themselves, but then were able to put together a playoff run that culminated in Patrick Mahomes holding the Lombardi Trophy again. And of course, last year going for the three-peat, they got their doors blown off against the Philadelphia Eagles. And, with the injuries in that receiving room, and I'll be honest, I even question if there's some dissension. I know that a lot has been made of Andy Reid and Travis Kelsey kind of bumping each other. But, truthfully, I think that it's a bit of a motivational tactic that Reid uses with certain players. And certain players, you know how far you could push versus others that you got to hone it in a little. And I think when Andy Reid has been around these guys for as long as he has, he knows how to push the right buttons, so to speak. And I mean, his Super Bowl trophies would suggest that. Definitely tough seeing Steve Spagnuolo against the Giants. He was the mastermind behind the Giants' improbable Super Bowl 42 victory as he really brought the heat on the GOAT Tom Brady, preventing the Patriots from being the NFL's second undefeated team as they finally got one giant L. It was the last game of the year. But Spagnuolo, I think about turning points in Giants history. When we fired Tom Coughlin unceremoniously after the 15 season, and we were coming into a lot of money, and we were going to be in a position to really give out some max deals to some free agents and to reinvest in our defense, I think it's incredibly unfortunate that Tom Coughlin was let go of the way that he did. And, the Giants, quite frankly, haven't been right since that boat trip the next year. Ben McAdoo taking over, the hot coordinator that didn't last 2 years in New York after pissing off everybody with the unceremonious benching and disrespect to Giants legend Eli Manning. It was a lose-lose for he and Geno Smith alike. I think it's insulting to both players revisiting the whole situation. But Spagnuolo finished that particular season as the Giants head coach for the final couple of weeks. And he was a one-time head coach before that with the former St. Louis Rams. Obviously, they're in LA now, and it didn't go his way. He's been a superb defensive coordinator for a very long time, as he is the only coordinator who is a four-time Super Bowl champion. Will he ever get a head coaching gig again? Will he ever be interested again? I don't know the answer to that. But I do question, after making one mistake in firing Coughlin, a two-time Super Bowl winner and a two-time New York Giant, he was also a member of the '90 team as a assistant coach. I feel that keeping Spagnuolo and maybe giving a little faith in that he could potentially be a head coach is something that the New York Giants may truly, truly regret as they decided to go in a different direction. And it just didn't work out. It just did not work out when they chose to veer away from Steve Spagnuolo. And these are certain defining points in an organization's history where you wonder what if and what if and what if. And, sports is filled with what ifs. What if George Foreman doesn't lose to Muhammad Ali? Would he be looked at as the greatest of all time? Sports are filled with what ifs. If Jackie Smith makes that catch, the Cowboys and Steelers share the decade. All kinds of what ifs. What if David Tyree doesn't catch that ball on his helmet? Randy Moss is a champion. Are the '07 Patriots the greatest team of all time if that happens? What ifs galore. The '98 Vikings, one of the best teams ever to not win one. If Norwood makes the kick, the Bills are revered as one of the greatest periods of time for a football team. Instead, they're just looked at as the perpetual bridesmaids. So, sports most definitely is filled up with what ifs. What else is cooking on the brain? Got to give a shout out to Cal Raleigh of the Seattle Mariners. Switch hitting catcher recently broke Mickey Mantle's switch hitting record. 4 home runs in a season. He's hit another one since. And Cal Raleigh is approaching, potentially breaking the 2022 record of Yankees current captain Aaron Judge. That was a 61-year record held by the late, great Roger Maris. And in just a few short years, removed from that historic American League event. And, people have different ways that they look at this stuff. I mean, you look at the records in Major League Baseball, the way that they go, and a lot of people see Judge as the true home run king because they don't want to recognize steroid abusers as the home run king. Barry Bonds owns the record at 74, but Barry Bonds will never be enshrined into Cooperstown. So there's that too. This is, of course, something that is forever going to be a hot topic. But I'm not going to lie. I hope Raleigh doesn't get the record. Cal. I don't want Cal to get the record. I want it to stay as a Yankee. With a Yankee, it's always been something I've been proud of. That the American League home run record, pretty much 20 years before I was born, and up until this very moment, has always been held by somebody wearing a New York Yankee uniform. But that could severely change. I'm also curious to see if they reward Cal with the American League MVP, because while I do think that what he's doing is spectacular in terms of home run value, Aaron Judge is hitting about 80 or 90 points higher than Rayleigh. So what are we valuing? Because it doesn't seem like we're valuing batting average. And the home runs are not that distinctly out of whack where he's running away with that. I mean, you got 58 versus high 40s, but, take it to account that Aaron Judge did miss a couple of weeks with that shoulder injury, so the elbow injury. So it will be interesting to see how the voters go, but I do believe that whether it's fair or not, Cal is going to get the American League MVP. And I'm sure that a lot of people will have this as a hot topic debate. Enjoy your Monday Night Football tonight, everyone. I'm picking the Ravens, as I've already stated. I'm going to post that on my socials. If you haven't already, please make it a point, like and subscribe to the channel, the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast on YouTube. Check out the V-Mix, the Vicious Mix with my man, Idris Salam, on live365.com. Check out the Casual Convo Show with the beautiful Miss Coco on Hand Radio every Wednesday night from 8 to 10 p.m. And do not forget to check out the Sports Corner with our good friend, Mr. Johnny Nast. And we are going to be cooking up an appearance on their show in the near future. I believe that Johnny told me they're going to be doing their previews for the NFL weeklies on Tuesdays. So definitely going to be popping in, and possibly we do a dual stream with those guys. But until next time, I am Richie. Have a great rest of your week. I hope your Monday was pleasant. I'm out.